God, Meg, we can all hear you sipping your drink. Are you kidding me? Disgusting.
You two are literally the worst people that have ever
That
disgraced.
was so gross. That was worse than my beard. It was like
somebody's God's earth.
it sounded like you spit on the can and then slurped it off.
I actually wasn't.
Oh, I've seen people that do that where like they leave a little bit there and it's like warmed up and then oh God, it's like an amateur.
Like that?
Stop it.
So what's going on, everyone? Welcome to Liberty Risk Podcast. I'm Billy.
And I'm Hugh.
I'm Meg.
And we're gonna have a pretty freaking show today. And I'm Meg. And I'm Meg. And I'm Meg.
I have to remember to say it basically when Hugh is saying it.
I have to remember to say my name. That's what you said. I have to remember to say my name.
No. I'm not saying that. To start it while you're saying it, because you guys have shit on me multiple times about how there's an awkward pause. And I'm like, I don't see an awkward pause.
There is an awkward pause. You're like, I'm Billy. I'm Hugh. I'm Meg.
If it helps, we're just going to keep shitting on you.
I mean, that's very accurate to me.
If nothing else, we're consistent.
You're like, I'm Meg.
That's just how I'm going to introduce myself right now.
Guys, I'm so looking forward to this weekend. I think we all need this weekend.
Oh, yeah, we're going to have a great time. Meg, you want to tell everyone what's going on this weekend?
Okay, so
super happy.
No, it's not.
This is Meg's weekend. Meg has set up this entire weekend.
I'm like really, really excited. This is basically my vacation, but I'm working it. So we are having a veterans networking event at Maker's Craft Brewery. Hello, Mike. And it is Maker's Craft Brewery is in Norfolk, Virginia. It is from 11 to 1400, 2 o'clock. So we are going to have a ton of different resources for veterans, whether it's we have direct hiring people, managers, we have recruiters there. We're going to have a ton of veteran service organizations there. We're going to have a ton of different nonprofits there. There's several of them, the Honor Foundation, 3 Rangers, Leashes of Valor, Disruptive Media, I think it's called. I can't remember. There's cool cups that are going to be there.
I'm sure they don't watch this. I'm sure they won't be offended.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm just going to start working for them anyways. They're part of Kairos and Kairos Tech as well. So it's a huge event that we're going to be putting on. And yeah, I've been doing a lot of the work. I don't want to say that it's all me.
Don't do that. You've been busting your ass on your end. You've been busting your ass to get this shit together, and you've done
it's so funny you guys do that because Leslie called me today. She goes, "I'm so excited. Meg's gonna do great," and I'm like, "Eh."
Yes, it's what other people. Leslie builds you up.
She's gonna do great things. I'm like, she could try.
It's so funny.
It's acceptable.
She was so right. We sit here and build Meg up to her face. Like, Meg, you're doing amazing. And everyone, people are like, so how'd Meg do? Yeah, she's Meg.
Yeah. It's
just
it's just like when people see my dog Guinness and they're like, "You're a good boy." I'm like, "Yeah, you got to keep him reaching. Always forward and all that."
I don't know if you've actually noticed
the treat far enough in front of his face.
On the Instagram posts, every single one, it says Guinness is the goodest boy.
Guinness is the goodest boy.
But it's on every single post.
I did not notice that.
Yes, it's literally
I'll be going back and editing all of those at 2 a.m.
He's a mediocre boy. He's okay.
Yeah.
He's still breathing.
Yeah. Very well.
He's better than Wiley right now.
So the three of us are going to be there. Our friend Leslie with Kairos, Danique with Leashes of Valor.
We have some speakers.
We have a couple of speakers that are coming down as well. Meg, are you speaking? Have you gotten over your stage fright yet?
I'm not going to be speaking, saying a speech or anything, but I might be introducing people or being like, "Hey, refreshments are over here."
Are you speaking about your Tourette's or your dyslexia?
No. Yeah, not saying my life story because we'll be here forever, but
True that. You a talker.
Also, part of my life story is here with us today.
Yes, I'm very excited.
Yes.
Please go ahead and introduce our guest, please.
Okay, I wanted to get the okay. So we actually have my mom here today. She I'm gonna let her speak for herself, but here's Stephanie. And I'm so excited. I'm sorry.
You should be.
Really, bring her in.
Oh my God, with the yelling.
Jesus.
Here she is. That's my mom.
Hey, Stephanie, how are you?
Hi, how are you?
Oh, we're not sober.
Did you get a glass of wine, Steph?
No, because
you poured her any from your bag of wine that you've been using?
Have you shown your mom the bag of wine, you heathen?
She knows about my medical condition, so she's gonna be kind of upset.
It's not a medical condition. It's it's laziness.
No, so Steph, when I went camping with Nick.
No, stop.
No. I bought a box of boxed wine for us to go camping with, and then it broke in the rain, so now I just have a sack of wine.
No, that's actually a complete fault. That's false. That's a lie. What happened was she bought the box of wine and FaceTimed all of us and said, "Look, I got this amazing box of wine." And she got so excited to get into the wine, she actually just ripped the box apart and just started drinking from the bag like this, squeezing it. It was horrible. Yeah. It was just horrible.
Oh, that's a proud mother look. My mom makes that look all the time.
We had a very proud mom moment before because she was like, "Megan, how does this rum taste? It's diet rum, and I don't know if we want it because it kind of tastes bad." And I was like, "Let me see." And I started chugging it in the bottle, and she's like, "Megan, no!" And I was like, "Ah."
Yeah. All right, enough about Meg's failed adult life. Stephanie, why don't you go ahead and tell us what it is that you do?
Well, I'm a licensed mental health counselor in New York State. I'm also a certified rehabilitation counselor, and I'm an EMDR therapist and an addiction therapist.
What is EMDR for those of us who maybe don't know what it is?
So EMDR is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, where you take traumatic memories and help through bilateral stimulation through the eyes. Mm-hmm. You help the individual reprocess the memories so they're not as distressing.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So you're kind of like reliving.
Well, you don't actually relive them. We don't go like drilling down into deep where you have to describe everything. But what it does is kind of a little more like free association, like whatever image is most disturbing to you, we go into that image, and then we start to measure your level of distress until it gets down and it's no longer distressing. Usually what happens with trauma is that we have what we call a negative cognition that gets attached to it, meaning that you might think like, I should have done more, which is a responsibility thing, or I am powerless in this situation. And so we try to link that memory with a more positive cognition, such as things like, I did the best I could, I'm safe now. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. That's clearly a big difference than just kind of dealing with some survivor's guilt or resentment for not doing the best that you could.
Well, yeah, and EMDR has been around for about 30 years. It was used for military members that had trauma. It was used first responders after 9/11 were given EMDR, but it is one of the most researched therapeutic techniques that there are.
That's pretty cool.
There is. Okay.
So, Stephanie, you're here for a very specific reason that we're very fortunate and appreciative to be able to talk with you about today. You were at 9/11 at Ground Zero, correct? Mm-hmm. On your way to work, I believe.
Yes, at that time, yes. Mm-hmm.
So I think what we talked about in the green room a little bit, we've heard a lot of the same stories from a lot of the same people, not that there's have less value, but what we really want to ask you about today is, do you recall making any conscious decisions or any clear thoughts during what was going on while you were on the ground?
I do recall some clear thoughts. I don't have like a clear measurement of events, so it's very hard for me when I participate in some kind of assessment for when they asked me, well, what did you do here? What time were you there? I can't do that. But I do have clear memory of, at that time, of feeling trapped, feeling fearful, thinking that, reviewing in my head that I might not get out of this alive, and that, did I say goodbye to, what was the last things I did? And I did remember saying goodbye to my son that morning.
That's pretty common. People always people wondering if they said goodbye to the people that they care about. Is that common for most people that are faced with potentially life-threatening incidents?
Yeah, I believe that is common, and particularly when when there's a feeling that I really might die here. This is it, as opposed to different traumas, like, I was in a car accident and I'm shook up, but I knew I didn't fear that I was going to die at that point. Or maybe I've, had an adverse experience in a relationship, or my parents were yelling. There may be a feeling of being unsafe, but not necessarily a feeling of impending death.
All right.
So, Steph, do you want to actually kind of tell us what you can of the timeline of that day and what happened for you?
Well, I could tell
if you remember, whatever you can.
I was running late for work.
It's probably Meg's fault.
We actually didn't know each other at that
We
time.
didn't know each other.
We can still blame Meg. It's okay.
And I got on the train in Brooklyn and got off the train. And when I stepped out, it was kind of, when I came up from under the subway, it was pandemonium. I was headed to Pearl Street. Actually, I was originally headed to the Towers. There was a B. Dalton bookstore in one of the towers, and I was headed over there to pick up a book. But obviously never made it there. So
really quick, when you came up from the subway, so the first one of the planes had already hit?
Yeah, one of the planes had already hit. Okay. And the second plane hit soon after. I always kind of credit my laziness for being on time to actually saving my life, because had I been on time and been in the bookstore, I would have been right there in the tower.
Sure.
So
obviously you did not go to the bookstore. What were you redirected? Was it a muscle memory?
No, what happened was clearly, like I said, things were in pandemonium. There were police cars. There were people screaming. The tower was, smoking. And I remember holding a woman that was screaming. And as I held her, she pointed to the sky. And that was when I saw the first person jump from one of the towers. So,
Jesus. Was there anybody kind of directing people where to go? Did you just think I need to get away from here?
Yeah. So I thought at that time, I said, well, maybe the safest place is to be in my building at work. So I went there. At that time, there was a police officer in front of the entrance, and he wouldn't let me in. And I had told him I worked there, but it was kind of unnerving to see, even the first responders were frightened. You could see it. And he said to me, I said to him, where should I go? And he says, I don't know. And I remember thinking, well, if they don't know, how what do I do? And so kind of trying to problem solve myself out of the situation. So I remember thinking, if I get to the Brooklyn Bridge, I could walk over the bridge. And so I started walking over that way. When I got there, though, it wasn't soon after I started walking towards the bridge that I heard a rumble and saw the first tower probably went down. I think it was the first. And there was this tidal wave of white dust and crap. It just looked like a giant white wave.
Right.
And I knew I couldn't outrun it. So rather than go forward on the Brooklyn Bridge, I hung left towards City Hall Park, and I remember people just running ahead of me. And
you like just ducked out of the way, try to
get
away from it.
Stage left,
Yeah.
exit stage left.
Yeah.
And that was when I thought I didn't know. I mean, you understand the whole situation was, you had fighter planes flying overhead all of a sudden.
Oh yeah. So you didn't know what was going on.
You didn't know, and I kicked off my shoes because I was wearing heels at the time.
Those are not going to do well.
Nope.
Not going to hold up.
And started walking towards, more uptown because I knew I had a former employer there and on 14th Street Neath Avenue, and that employer would let me in, and I could use a phone because there was no cell service.
Sure.
And that's another thing. I mean, we're so dependent on wireless systems and cell systems that we can knock out communication pretty easily.
Yeah, so you had to go try to find a landline to get a call to somebody and tell them you're okay.
Right. At that time, there were still payphones in the city, so there were lines as I started walking towards 14th Street, but I was walking barefoot towards 14th Street, and at that time, people just had their car doors open, listening to radios, and that's when you heard about, what happens,
right?
The other sites,
right?
And it really did feel like, I don't know if I'll get out of here. The strangest part was I did have to take the subway then to get out hours later.
Wow!
And I remember that the tension was palpable.
Oh, I couldn't
because
even imagine.
It was like, this is what we're going to do and we're going to get on. And I mean, I'd never ridden the subway where it was just so packed and so quiet.
That'd be crazy. So after all this happens, eventually you have to go back to work.
Mm-hmm. I actually had to go back to work the very next day.
Oh, hell no. Hard pass. Really?
No, because I was part of a telecommunications company, and we were told that we had to report to duty because we had to rebuild the infrastructure for first responders.
Jesus.
And all hands on deck. That's the response. So my job converted from being this sort of like a human resource person to being the person who helps find, breathing masks so the guys can go. We had a building at West Street at the time, and West Street, the whole building blew out from the side. And I worked with people who had far more traumatic consequences, I think, than I did. Like hanging on to desks so they didn't go flying out the side of the building.
Right. So you went back. So you eventually went back to work. At what point did either you or your employer decide it was time to see somebody about it?
I decided about, I guess I would say 3 months later, somewhere about that time. And I decided on my own. My employer did provide counseling services to a lot of people, but I felt I was okay. And I really didn't know at that time, not being a therapist myself at the time, that I was already experiencing PTSD symptoms.
Right. PTSD was still pretty. Billy, you were in your 30s back then. PTSD was still a pretty new term, right?
Very funny you.
Well,
Very funny you.
I do what I can.
Yeah, the term is new, Hugh, but it's not the disorder is not
right.
new. I mean,
we'd only recently started calling
fatigue.
That's right, battle fatigue, and before that it was shell shock, I think.
Shell shock, yeah.
So after you started seeing did you get an immediate kind of relief or immediate feeling like you were being helped by your therapist?
Not at all.
You and 3% of American service members.
No, not at all. I felt I felt that I was speaking, even though the therapists were diagnosing me with PTSD, I did not feel I was being treated for the trauma. It was more, I remember a therapist saying to me, there's nothing but time that's going to help you. And that wasn't helping.
Mm.
And I kind of gave up on therapy for a while, and then eventually went back and, found a therapist that sort of knew and understood trauma. And then later on, participated in some EMDR sessions.
Was your therapist trained to deal with PTSD situations?
I'm not sure she was trained to deal with PTSD, but she had worked with a lot of first responders from 9/11 and a lot of 9/11 survivors. So I would have to say she had experience in working with trauma.
Right.
So she validated what I was feeling, because I think that was the hardest part. You start to experiencing symptoms, whether it's depression, night terrors, irritability, anxiety, these panic attacks, and you start to think like, this isn't me. Somebody who might have been highly social can become suddenly introverted.
Right. So were you feeling those?
Oh yeah.
And did you notice them? And is that when you made the decision to go back, or were you referred? Did somebody else recommend it to you?
No, I think it was more like family members were saying to me, you need to do something. I think, not to blow it out, not to share this, it just shows you how bad the anger and the irritability can get, is that I think I ripped a door off its hinges one day.
Jesus.
I'm not surprised.
So.
I mean,
Meg's like I felt the backhand. I believe it.
Oh yeah, no. If there's anyone I fear in this family, it's definitely Steph. We constantly joke that if any of us mess up, Steph will be the first to come for us. Actually, my stepbrother, she just found out that he got tattoos. I was the first one to get tattoos. And then my stepbrother, her son, Nick, got a tattoo, and she didn't see it for a long time. And she saw it.
How long is a long time?
Like 2 years.
Whoa!
Yeah, well, he was really careful in covering it up.
Now you're in trouble twice. Once for getting it, once for hiding it for 2 years.
I pointed it out at Thanksgiving. I was like, "Hey, you got something on your arm there."
You fucking dark.
Well, I thought it was a scratch. I was like, "Oh, Nick, I think you're bleeding." And he looked at me. He's like, "Nigga, shut up." And I was like, "Oh, I know what that is." I was like, "Oh, you didn't hear me though." And like everyone was sitting there at the table. I was like, "I'm not gonna say anything." And I had both my shoulders done already.
You're such a narc.
Well, he's like, "I'm gonna go swimming in the pool," and she was like, "What is on your leg?" So we know Steph is the one to fear in my family. My dad is definitely the pushover, big baby boy.
So, okay. So now you've been to your therapist. How long was when you've from 9/11 to when you got your therapist you actually liked and was validating that you had PTSD?
I would say about 2-3 years.
Whew, that adds up. And how long after that did it take for you to decide that you wanted to become a therapist?
I entered school in 2009.
Okay, so a little bit of time.
But I was kind of, I was still going and attending work, but things weren't the same for me. And I remember saying over and over to people, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing here? And so I was already starting to think about which direction I wanted to go. And consequently, after we rebuilt the network, everybody kind of got laid off. So we worked long shifts. We worked around the clock. I have to say, mostly the men and women I worked with did a fantastic job of, rebuilding that network and dedicating themselves after 9/11. And so many of them were just like, unceremoniously laid off in 2008, 2007, 2006, 2007, and 2008.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
So
When you decided that you wanted to become a therapist, did you know up front that you wanted to help people who'd been through trauma?
no, I didn't. Actually, I was thinking of things like TBI. I wasn't thinking of, I didn't have that in my head because even though I had experienced trauma, it wasn't like I really wanted to delve into that.
You don't want to relive it with all of your patients and be sitting there wondering if whose is worse than whose, and can I lay it on the table in front of them?
So what happened, it was more like, sometimes I say, like, for a therapist, their niche finds them more than they find it.
Mm-hmm.
You could set out and say, well, this is what I'm going to do. And all of a sudden you're getting a certain type of client, and that's what you're getting over and over.
Right.
And that's what started to happen. And the more I started to, I started with addictions, and the more I started to tread into addictions, the more I started to see, well, there really is a link between addictions and trauma, both recent trauma and past trauma. So thinking about it in terms of vets, think about that, trauma is more than just events that create fear and distress. They could be feelings of responsibility, like I should have protected someone, feelings of powerlessness. They could be the difference between a moral injury and a moral crisis. Think about people really in active duty where they're like deployed to these places, and there's a child there that has a bomb strapped to them. There's your moral crisis right there.
They got laid off because Verizon knew they were going to get sick.
Oh no, pause on. He's watching. Go away. You're not supposed to be here.
Don't.
Oh no, I yelled at her earlier. I was like, you better be here.
So the other thing that causes trauma are things like betrayal. So what happens with trauma is, particularly in the brain, it gets linked to earlier trauma. So it doesn't happen, isolated events. So you have maybe a trauma you experienced in the military. That can be reinforced by earlier events.
Interesting. Do you see a lot of military patients?
I do see some. I don't see a lot. I think mostly because I'm very close to the proximity to the VA. So a lot of them go there.
Right.
But I have seen some. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I assume that they're coming to see you for trauma related to active duty experiences?
It could be. Sometimes it's anxiety. Sometimes it's communication issues with family members. Sometimes it's, people that have moved into the area, relocated, helping their family adjust. It could be a number of things. So it doesn't always have to be trauma.
That's good.
Sorry,
go ahead.
But trauma is my primary focus, and it is my primary interest.
And how long have you been doing this now?
Since 2012. So
that's a good amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
Living where you live, do you see a lot of first responders?
I do see first responders. Yeah, I do. And particularly now, things are very difficult for them. So talk about feeling threatened, feeling unsafe.
Oh yeah, now it's going to be. Yeah. There was I was watching. It was a commercial that came on the other day. It said it's amazing how we can go from loving our law enforcement on 9/11 to hating them in 2020.
Yeah,
the abrupt swing from one side of the spectrum to the other.
Yeah. And I also think that is because a lot of the people who are involved in kind of protesting against some of these police officers and first responders is because they were too young to remember 9/11. You know, they weren't around during it, so they didn't feel that impact. But 20 years ago, or over 20 years ago, almost 20 years ago now, is
Jeez.
that, you know, everybody, you know, it was like we were all kind of connected,
Right.
and it didn't matter where you went. Now, we're very divisive, you know, and
Easily.
whether you feel that there's always going to be, just like in the military, just like in therapists, there's always going to be people that are unethical.
Yeah,
So,
unfortunately.
you know, it is unfortunate because it makes it bad for those that are doing their job. But yeah, I do see first responders. I do see some 9/11 survivors. I do see a lot of people who've had sexual trauma, abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So there's you know, there's PTSD and there's complex PTSD, and complex PTSD is when you're in a situation such as like being abused as a kid, and you're not going to be able to get out, and it just keeps happening over and over and over again. So they're not finite events.
Interesting.
What I want to stress though is that it doesn't make one trauma worse than another. Trauma is bad in how the person feels and how.
And that's one thing I've always we've said it on here too, is that the boasting and bragging just in the military ranks of, I've seen more stuff than you have. Well, we all take it.
Everybody hurts differently, and everybody heals differently. And one person's trauma does not trump somebody else's.
No, absolutely not. That's one thing we always try to promote on here too.
Yeah. There's racial trauma. There is, you know, combat trauma. There is, you know, you could have trauma from a car accident. You could have trauma from being bullied as a child. Those are just, some of those are just distressing events. But I always liken it to put enough distressing events and trauma and think of it like a junk closet where you keep throwing everything in and shutting the door. And then one day you have to open the door and everything comes crashing down.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it.
That's a really good analogy, yeah.
Yeah.
Eb, I have a question about that EDMR. Is it
EMDR?
That's what I said. I definitely said EMDR.
No,
Yes.
you said EDMR.
I don't remember like that.
We're not listening to EDM here, okay?
EMDR?
Yes, EMDR.
Is it more effective for some situations as opposed to others, or is it an effective method for trauma in general?
It has been proven to be an effective measure for anxiety, depression, OCD, chronic pain, trauma. These are all studies that have been done, that have been replicated, verified studies. So when I said it was one of the most studied therapeutic techniques, you know, I was really like, they've applied it to so many different areas.
Right. Interesting.
So it's not just for trauma, because how do you have trauma and not have anxiety?
Sure.
How do you have trauma and not have depression? You know, it's like you can't just separate and say, well, I'm just going to treat the trauma piece, but I'm going to, or not have addictions, you know?
Yeah.
That's fucking crazy.
Some people, that's the
blowing
only...
you guys' mind.
Yeah, and now I'm a little fucking more mad that my goddamn therapist won't call me back from the VA. 18 months, and all I've had is that one trapped phone call with 13 psychologists, but not one referral.
Well, you can call the EMDRIA, which is the governing body for EMDR therapists, and you can reach out for an EMDR therapist.
It is not, I will say this, it is not easy to find an EMDR therapist. They are far and few between. Steph and one other woman are the only people I know, and I mean, I've talked to a lot of therapists, that, like, anywhere that I have met that do EMDR. So it's not, you have to very specifically look for this therapy, because there's a lot of training that goes into it.
Yeah,
like, I wish Steph could do my EMDR. Like, shoot, be like, hey,
I assume there's a conflict of interest there.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Really.
But I
Is it-
can refer her to some. I do know some EMDR therapists in this area, and I'm sure, like, when Meg's ready, I can refer her to somebody in Jersey, or because
That was a mom.
like I said,
That was a
there
mom plug right there. That was a mom plug. When Meg is ready.
When
You
Meg
do not
is
understand.
ready.
Every time I go up to visit, she's like, Megan, look at this EMDR video. Megan, look at this other link. This is a health link about EMDR. Megan,
You're
have you
digging
been,
your
have you
own
been
grave
seeing
right
your
now.
therapist?
Yeah, now you're just admitting that you're neglectful of your own mental health. Come on, Meg, get it together.
I'm not neglectful. The VA does not give two shits about me because I call them.
You
and
and
they
like
are like
87 other people, 87% of all their people.
Yeah, I call them and they're like, "You called a week ago," and I'm like, "Because I feel crazy inside.
Because I got the problems.
I've got issues," and they're
Because
like,
my brain's going boogity, boogity, boogity.
"Yeah," and they're like, "Well, you're in college," and I'm like, "I can't handle these things."
Yeah, on the GI Bill, it's like a
You know what I would've been like?
Patty
And you're
Madison
on a
production over
phone.
here.
You're in
Yeah.
college. What kind of response is that? You're in college and you're
Well,
on a
they say
phone.
that because I am the only college student at my VA clinic. So they
Well, that
know
obviously
me.
means you are not deserving of care then.
So what are they saying? You're too high functioning?
I guess so. I don't know. The lady, I got in an argument with a lady.
First time anybody's ever said
I've
that to
been
her.
working here for
So
20
let me-
years and blah, blah, blah. I was like, listen, lady, I don't give two shits how long you've been working there. And I literally said shits and she hung up on me. So that's fine.
Let me say this to you. I'm not only a licensed mental health counselor, but I'm a certified rehab counselor. And as a rehab counselor, what we do is we don't look at somebody and say, well, they have PTSD or anxiety or, and they can't do this and they can't do that. We look at it from the perspective of why can't they do it? Like, what is it that they need? So you might need certain supports in the environment. And we look to assess that and help the person find where they're going to be the most successful, both, whether it's in school or work or both. So if you are, a returning service member and you're trying to assimilate back in society, but you have PTSD or you have anxiety, then it's how do we look at what career you're going to do? Was that my daughter?
Yes. Yes. She's a heathen. It's not your fault. She's clearly one of those devil people we hear about.
So
Pa's going to yell at me later.
You deserve it.
It's fine. They know.
With your mom on you, you even didn't excuse me.
Excuse me.
It's so awkward. That was so awkward. That was so
It's
awkward.
fine. We'll be sitting at dinner, like saying grace, and I'll burp, and I'm like, I'm so sorry. Like it came out.
So, as I was saying, like a rehab counselor helps, like vocationally, to find where a person can be successful. Okay.
So, like,
So
is
if you
that,
have
hold on,
anxiety,
does that environment include work and study? Well, like some people, they might not be able to go to work, but they might be able to function as a professor or a researcher or somebody who's not doing necessarily labor-intensive work?
It could be, but it depends on what we're talking about. So let's just say an individual has anxiety, right? So maybe their anxiety is exacerbated by being around too many people in a work setting. But maybe they would be very good doing, like you said, research where they have a limited contact, and there they can thrive. Or what are the things they might need if they are in the work setting, such as I need to take a break, or I need to step outside, or manage my workload, or wear headphones at work. Right. So these are things that a rehab counselor would look at, and so that person can be successful. So if they're having trouble in school and they need supports in the school system, whether it's high school, college, whatever, maybe extra time on tests because of anxiety or ADHD.
It definitely makes a lot more sense why the college keeps contacting me, trying to get me to sign that paper.
It's probably because they know that you failed that class 5 times.
4, I withdrew once.
Okay, so you failed that class 5 times.
Would put me on blast. Jesus.
So a rehab counselor might work with you on what could help you make it successful. Like maybe you need a tutor, maybe you need a different way to learn.
I will say that Old Dominion has been pretty good at offering classes. That I didn't realize what it was that they were doing until just now. That they offer these seminars to try to figure out, hey, are you having trouble learning in this environment? Well, come let us help you figure out how we can fix that. Or do you need more time on tests? Do you need recorded lectures as opposed to one and done lectures and things like that?
Yes, absolutely.
What's that?
You should do that.
Well, I've been gone, hating my life in California for 10 weeks. But now that I'm home, maybe.
Hold up.
Isn't everything virtual right now?
Hold up.
I'm
gonna pump the brakes on hating California. No.
I don't have my beautiful crystal clear water anymore. No, okay.
Shut up. I'm not letting you get away with this.
I loved it out there. It's beautiful.
Postcard-esque view.
It was
awesome. The fires raging in the background.
Yeah, well, Meg, you showed up and the whole state was on fire. So good job there.
It's still on fire.
It's because you burp and don't say excuse me.
Listen, I was taught by the best. Called my dad.
Yeah, well, he's probably watching.
Not put your father on blast on a live show.
Seriously, what's wrong with you? But yes, the Office of Student Accessibility does a lot of that. Student services, yes. They do a lot of that stuff, and I didn't realize that it was a lot of rehabilitational stuff that they were doing. I mean, because I have a service dog, so I just thought it was kind of like we're trying to stay ADA compliant kind of thing, and we're obligated to offer all these things. But now that I'm thinking back to all the emails and the other things that I've done through them, there's a lot of rehabilitational efforts they're putting into making sure that everybody is successful and is able to advocate for their own success.
Exactly. So the idea is that the rehab counselor would, or counselor in general, advocates for you, but they also teach you how to advocate for yourself.
Which is extremely important.
Your own self-efficacy. So, for instance, like me asking you earlier, like what are some of the things that you can do to be successful in this class? And it might mean, like you said, listening to recorded lectures where you can rewind them and listen to them again, to understand something.
Right.
It might be extra tutoring. It might be extra time on test. Very often, especially if one has PTSD, putting that kind of pressure on somebody, they just zone out.
Yeah.
I zone out a lot.
Can confirm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been really bad at studying this past 2 weeks.
Your mom is literally right there.
I know. I tell her everything.
She's 29 though. I mean, she's like, there's like a point where, I can only make suggestions, like study.
Oh,
yeah. I try, I will sit down to study and I will zone out. I will sit and I'll stare at my book.
So you pull a Meg.
Ha!
Yeah, I'll do that. Although, Steph, I did get a really good book the other day. You'd be really proud of me.
Which book is it?
It's called For Love of Country, Confronting Rape and Sexual Harassment in the U.S. Military.
Oh.
I cried on the first page. It's by T.S. Nelson, and I got a signed copy somehow.
Oh, okay.
Where is it? There it is.
Good.
I bought it off of Amazon from a used bookstore because I always buy the used things.
Obviously.
And yeah, it's cheaper. And I think I read the acknowledgments or the introduction, and I was at the gym and I started crying on the elliptical, so I had to get off. So I went and I got one of those weighted balls. Or no, I asked if I could get a weighted ball, and they were like, we can't give you one. So I went to the battle ropes, and I just did those as hard as I possibly could for probably 10 minutes. And they were like, this girl is a psycho, because I look like I was nuts at the moment.
You got to get it together, Meg. Your college is going to throw you out.
No, my college, I called the provost office the other day.
Are they going to back pay you?
They hadn't even heard from the military services offices yet.
Oh, nice. Well,
yeah, I called them directly.
See this part of your hand?
Smells like a lawsuit.
This part of your hand, you go in there and you start backhanding people across the face.
Oh no, I'll just call Congress at this point.
You just walk in there and start doing a lot of this. Like, what are you doing? I'm warming up. Just getting ready.
Yeah. I contacted them in August.
Well,
In August, I contacted them.
They can't all be tens.
I'm
They can't all be tens.
I am very upset. And I called you the other day, Steph, to talk to you about it, but I didn't get to you. But yeah, so I called the provost office and they were like, because the military services office was like, oh, we're going to talk to them on the 28th of September. I called and they were like, we haven't gotten any notification. And I was like, I literally filed for this, or talked to them about this 4 weeks ago.
And document.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Stephanie, I just have one more question.
Sure.
In the time since the initial incident, you had your therapist who finally validated that you had PTSD and needed some actual help. And now you have gotten into therapy and deal with personnel who have trauma and addiction problems. Have you, now that time has gone by and you know more now than you did initially, do you feel that you've gotten a certain level of acceptance and understanding and relief?
Yeah, I would say I have. And I would say, I think what happened was when I did the EMDR therapy, I was doing it from the standpoint because some of my symptoms were resurfacing. And that was very recently. And now as a therapist, I recognized it. And what happened was a lot of stuff was popping up in the news about people now that were dying after being exposed to, 9/11.
The dust and the dirt and the debris and the chemicals and the smoke.
Yeah. And knowing I had gone to work the very next day, walked through that every day, been involved in that, breathing it in, I think that I started to have the night terrors again. And that's when I went for EMDR. I think the EMDR made it possible for me to just come to terms with it. Like I said, it's not as triggering. It's not that the memory's gone. It's still there. I still remember what I remember. But when I think about it, or I'm in a situation and people start talking about it, I don't have that panicky feeling anymore where my heart starts beating and I start, and I just want to leave the room.
That's excellent.
Or that feeling of, what do these people know? They don't get it.
Right.
Because there was a lot of that. I mean, I would hear people that were all the way out in Long Island and, in Suffolk talking about how distraught they were seeing it on the TV. And I was like, I really didn't have any kind of empathy for them.
Right.
Yeah, it was kind of, speaking of that, it was kind of crazy because my parents live on the North Shore in Port, like I said earlier, in Port Jeff, which is about an hour, just over an hour from where the towers were, right? Yeah, about an hour and a half, depending on how the LIE is doing that day. And my mom said it really didn't hit her, that she really didn't put two and two together until she actually saw the ashes over her yard, falling in her yard from the towers.
Wow.
Hours and hours and hours later. She said it was like, and it bothered her, because, and, also my father was stuck in the city, not anywhere remotely what you went through. I mean, he was there, within a couple of, 5 blocks and, but yeah, it was crazy because I talked to neighbors and stuff after I came, because I was on deployment at the time when I came back home, and like our neighbor Steve works on the Long Island Railroad, and he's an engineer, so he drives the train, and he was in Penn Station when it happened, and for him it was like, he went through his stuff where they told him, shut everything down, we don't know what's going on, blah 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 blah. So it's just the experiences, I guess, from people out there. My mom said it was more of, is this really happening?
Yeah.
Like, is this really going on right now? Like, what the heck is happening?
Even being right there, it was surreal for me. And of course, there were people that I worked with that were much closer, like more at the center, the epicenter of everything. But I think I've learned since then that, and in working with trauma, in answer to your question, Hugh, is that everybody has their own reference, and doesn't make my reference any more valid than someone else's, like Billy's mom seeing the ashes in the backyard. I mean, it's how a person interprets it, it's how they process it.
Right.
And my trauma was my trauma, but someone else's who might not have been directly there, but maybe saw things on the TV, might be just as traumatized.
Right.
I can't, so that's some of what I've learned also, this as part of that process, going through it and having more, understanding and tolerance for others and what their experiences are.
Right.
So, Steph, because you are my mom and I know you personally, I know that you have medical issues due to this. I don't know if it's federal or if it's state, but there is some form of insurance for the survivors of 9/11. And I know you have had a lot of issues with it. And I'd like you to kind of let us know.
I have currently 2 autoimmune conditions that are significantly debilitating. One is fibromyalgia, which is kind of difficult to diagnose, but what the research is starting to show is that a lot of firefighters and first responders are also developing.
I am very proud.
Billy.
Sorry, I'm cycling through stuff for the show and that came up. Sorry. Keep going. I'm so sorry about that.
Right. I have 2 ears. I didn't need that ear. Okay.
I don't know where that came from. I'm having technical issues with the show. It's skipping while we're talking, so I'm trying to get in here and fix it. I got to look it up on my phone.
Oh.
Okay, well, Billy aside.
So where was I?
So you have fibromyalgia.
And now the research is showing, but the World Trade Center 9/11 Fund has a very limited list of what they consider 9/11 related disorders. So I get monitored, but I don't really receive any kind of addressing of my medical issues. So it's kind of frustrating because you go and see a 9/11 doctor, and the 9/11 doctor is not a rheumatologist that you're seeing for it could be a dermatologist, and he or she just volunteered their time. So I feel there's a lot of difficulties and lapses in what it provides. And it seems like they're waiting to see, who develops cancer, who develops, significant respiratory distress. And those are serious. But I was told by a therapist who was very involved in 9/11. And he told me that the research coming out of Mount Sinai is saying that a lot of autoimmune conditions are linked to 9/11. I don't have anyone in my family that has these conditions or have ever had them. So
interesting.
Now, but if the 9/11 World Trade Center Fund doesn't agree with that, and I want to stress that was hearsay, what that person said. So I don't know if Mount Sinai did it, but there's also things like metabolic disorders from that. It's not just respiratory and cancer, So
yeah, I know within the military, there is, especially with like stuff like burn pits, people get different diseases, disorders. As far as, like, for me personally, nobody in my family has breast lumps. Nobody in my family has breast cancer. Nobody in my family is well endowed in general. We're all pretty, like, we're fairly petite, flat-chested ladies over here.
Your place to dime out your whole family's physical problem, whatever. Okay, go ahead.
I'm the tall one on my mother's side, and then I'm the short one on my dad's side. So, anyways, I worked on aircraft that, one, I had my chest laid down inside of one of the engines that went through the nuclear explosion in Japan that Billy was there for. I didn't know that that aircraft was radioactive. So I'm laying down, chest on this engine, and then a couple months later I turn up with cysts in my breast. So it's like, that wasn't even something I breathed in. Like, you can get stuff from any type of thing. Like, I had just breathing in the exhaust from the aircraft caused, like, immense damage just to, like, all of my organs inside. So, I mean, the same thing with that. It doesn't necessarily have to be just a respiratory issue. Like, I wasn't breathing in the radioactive whatever.
The 9/11 Fund has like a long list of what they consider conditions that they will cover for treatment. The problem is that some of the research that's out there has not been adequately recognized, and
So it's not that the research isn't being done; it's that the research isn't being validated.
Well, it's not being accepted by the World Trade Center Fund, and I think that's with good reason. I mean, any entity that wants to kind of control how much they're going to be paying out. I mean, look, they were looking to shut it down. Just
Right. You only have so much money, so you can only pay so many people X amount of money. So
like I said, it's receding in people's memories. It's unfortunately it is.
Yeah.
I mean, but it was interesting because my younger daughter, we were watching a movie, and I think there was a burning building or something, and the police officer ran into the building. And she said, "Why is the police officer running in?" And I said, "Because that's what a first responder does. And that's what first responders did during 9/11. They ran into buildings." Right. That's what
as a first responder, you don't even think about it, because that's muscle memory. It's just muscle memory from so much training that you're not thinking about what is the after effect. You're just like, there's people in that building that need help. I have to help them. And that's it.
Right. And so the same thing with the people that worked on these telecommunications networks. They never questioned. They never said, I might get sick or I might get that. They just went to work because they were as committed to rebuilding that infrastructure so that they can get the city back up and running, so then the first responders can communicate with each other. So, making sure 911 was operable, so that they did all that.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that, and I have, growing up out there, I have friends that, I guess growing up on Long Island, you always, as a kid, you always see these NYPD and FDNY guys and girls, and you always like somewhere along your life, you're like, I want to be a New York City cop, or I want to be a New York City firefighter. And I had a lot of friends who did that and are still doing that, and I think it's amazing. And talking to them after it happened, it was really interesting for them, and they brought it up. They're like, you don't really realize how many things that we rely on as a human species now in modern times that were unavailable after something like this, stuff that just gets shut down. You were talking about this. We rely so heavily on this, on our cell phones. That goes down like that. Then I had, I said, I have neighbors that were train engineers that got shut down.
Yeah.
My father, he got stuck out there for 2 days because it's what happened. You know, he couldn't get to his vehicle and he couldn't get back out to Long Island to get home. You know, it was absolute pandemonium. So there's so many little things I think people don't really realize. It wasn't just the towers going down. I think it was the people like yourself that were affected by it and the long-term effect that it has.
Sure.
And then all those micro little things that happened in sequence after that. No phones, you know, no contact with your loved ones, this, that, and this, that have affected people in such long terms. I think we now forget those things or never realized that those were heavily involved in the whole aspect of those towers falling down.
Right.
Yeah.
And exponentially, you think about people who lost spouses and then had to raise families, people who were displaced from their homes that were close to the 9/11 site. You know, there were plenty of homes and businesses that got displaced. So, yeah, there is like an exponential effect that happens.
That's fucking crazy.
I remember when it came down, and I think I was like 9 or 10, something like that. I was very young, and my first thought, because I didn't have spatial recognition, like I didn't understand distance. That was not a concept to me yet. My first thought was, oh my God, my dad lives up there. Is he okay? Like that was the first thought in my head was, is my dad okay? And later I realized apparently he was in like Connecticut or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
He was doing something. I don't know. But that was the first thought that I had, was just like, oh my gosh, is he okay? And we don't live anywhere near New York City. It's like a 40-minute drive to get into the city. But that was, even at that young age, that was my first thought. And I remember bawling my eyes out living in Georgia. And all the other kids in my class are like, why are you crying? Like, what are you so sad about? Well, I was the only one that was a Northerner. I was a Yankee to them. So they're like, all y'all Yanks up there. So they didn't really care all that much, but I'm crying my eyes out because I'm like, my dad could be dead. But realistically, it's like forever away.
It's crazy to hear that, Meg, because it's like, then my experience was, for me, 9/11 happened late at night. I was over in the Arabian Gulf on a ship.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we were getting ready to end the deployment. Yeah. So it's like we were getting ready to end the deployment, and then I'm watching this on a satellite feed. And for me, the frustration and anger from not being able to, because immediately after that second tower fell, whatever phone call or message or whatever that my captain got, we shut down all outward communications from that ship immediately. So I couldn't even contact my family to make sure everyone was okay. And then just being from New York, you know, like I said, being born in Queens, it stung. It stung to find out that was a terrorist attack and then not be able to do anything about it. So that's the other part of it too, is it's so interesting to meet all these people, you know, since it happened, and to hear, like, you know, everyone vividly remembers exactly where they were on that day. And that's one thing I think is absolutely crazy about it. They remember exactly where they were on that day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I would imagine for you, Billy, though, that it must have been, you know, it has a different turn, because then if you were already deployed, like, how would that affect you? Like,
we were already in a mindset. So after that happened, the captain called everyone out to the flight deck. So I was on a pretty big ship. It was an oiler, so it was a pretty big platform ship. So for anyone that's military,
military police, by the way.
Yeah, so I was actually an engineer at the time, because my first few years in, I was a snipe, so I was an engineer. But we had CH-46 personnel transport helos, so we had some pretty big helicopters. Just to give you an idea how big the ship was. So we called the whole crew out to the flight deck, even though it was almost 11 o'clock at night for us, and told us, hey, we're extending the deployment because we were supposed to head home in a few weeks. We were supposed to end our deployment. And this is my very first deployment. I was only a 19-year-old kid. And he said, we're going to extend our deployment for an unknown amount of time. And our ship's whole mission at the time was to supply jet fuel and ordnance, munitions, and supplies to the rest of the battle group. So I was in the Enterprise battle group. So our whole purpose was to make sure that those other ships had the gas they needed, especially for the planes, to fly and do their missions. Then when they did those first strikes in October, we were so close to the coast of Iraq that you could actually see on the horizon the lights from the explosions from the ship out on the water. And that's when it hit me. At that moment, it wasn't the towers going down. It wasn't the worrying about my family. It was at that moment that I think everything just came emotionally full storm for me, because I'm like, what the heck? Holy crap. Like, that's what made it real for me, was that night. Because I remember we had the Carl Vinson and the Enterprise carriers, and I was watching the planes take off rapidly. And then they were getting in flight formation, and then you just saw them take off towards the coast. And then within that hour, we were just up there on the smoke deck having a cigarette, and I'm literally hanging on the railing like this. And you just see it. My buddy was like, holy shit, look at that. And it was, and you see the very horizon, the very farthest part of the horizon light up. And we just put two and two together, because then shortly after that, the plane started coming back and landed on the carriers. So it was a different experience for me. When we finally pulled back in, because I was stationed in New Jersey, that was a big deal. We were the first ship to come back from deployment. We had the NYPD harbor units escort us into the base, along with the military police boats. I mean, we had about 20 patrol boats surrounding our ship. And we had not just the families, but it took forever to get off that base because there were so many people waiting for us to come back. And I didn't realize that never really hit me, because I kind of had tunnel vision with all that. I was like, I just want to get home. Like, I just want to go home and just, it was a 9-month deployment on a ship. And I'm just like, I just want to go home and eat some of my pop's good cooking and just hang out with my family. Like, I just want to get the hell out of here. But years later, about 10 years later, I was going through some old photos and stuff, and I found you and Meg are going to make fun of me, but Steph, you'll understand this. You'll understand this, Stephanie. Remember the old disposable cameras where you would get them and they would burn the date into the bottom right of the
Yes.
Okay. I found pictures that said 9/11/01 because the carrier, the Enterprise, was pulling up alongside of us to get fuel, but it was still September 10th here in the States. And I found these photos, about 12 hours of me and my buddies all looking happy and like we just got off a watch. So I looked at those photos and it was like, that was just a few hours. It was kind of a snapshot of time of just a few hours before the world changed. Because even the dynamic for the military on how we approach things from 9/11 completely changed.
Yeah,
Everything.
definitely.
Traveling changes, everything.
Oh, yeah.
And now we have, so now when you have other things that are cropping up, like COVID is a perfect example. And then you have people that have this unprocessed trauma, that are not safe. Then you can understand where, anxiety spikes, or people are sinking into a lot of depression.
I guess it makes a lot of sense. I hadn't really thought about it like that. I know for at least myself, I don't really consider it to be as big of a deal as a lot of other people around me, but I just hadn't taken into consideration that there are a lot of other people who maybe haven't felt safe for a myriad of reasons for a while, and now this is one other thing they do not feel safe about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or feeling in control. Yeah. Or feeling in control. That's a biggie.
Yeah.
That's a biggie.
Yeah.
So
Well, Stephanie, we cannot thank you enough for being
Thank you.
on and being willing to share just all that information with us tonight.
We'll have to get you on again to talk more about all this therapy stuff because I'm sure the guys are just like shocked by all of this information. No, Matt.
No, say
No.
no. Say
Actually,
no.
Actually,
No.
Steph would be able to handle that. She
God.
would. From what I've heard her story, she would.
No,
You know,
Stephanie, thank you so much for being on. Really, honestly,
Thank you, guys.
It's
Thank
been an
you, guys.
absolute pleasure.
Thank you. Nice talking to you.
Yeah,
Guys,
good night.
I'll come up and visit soon, I promise.
Don't lie to your mom on camera.
No, I was going up and visiting. They have a fire.
So just a quick thing here. My website, promisepathways.com.
Oh, yes.
There is a section there for EMDR. So there's like a TED Talk there and some other things. And you can learn how trauma is processed in the brain. Okay.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
What was it? Trauma's Pathway?
Promise Pathway.
Promisepathways.com.
All right,
Yeah.
cool.
If you guys are in the Long Island area, like Suffolk, Nassau County of Long Island, she is a wonderful therapist. I could not speak any more highly of her. She's like one of the best in the area. So please check out her website, her Instagram, her Facebook, promisepathways.com. It's Stephanie Kalachi. She's here in the house. Sorry.
Thanks, guys. It was great talking to you.
Oh, you too. Thank you so much,
Have a good
Stephanie.
night.
You too.
Love
Meg.
you.
Love you.
Oh, that was nice. She got that in right at the last minute.
I know. I love her. She's awesome. She's like the cool mom. Like I could tell her like, yo, Steph, I got real fucked up last night. And she'd be like, did you take an IV? Did you get an IV?
I'd be willing to sit by and watch her just wail on you for making piss poor life choices.
Oh, it's hilarious when
hilarious.
like
Yeah.
my dad comes in there. If you think I make piss poor life choices,
We do.
This man has like
Don't call your dad out on live TV. That's just rude.
no. We make fun of him in real life. He cries at every time. He's like Billy. He cries whenever there's like a song about young girls. All the time. So I keep a list of songs that'll make my dad cry. Like I literally have a list of those. And then
You're
also,
an ass.
That sounded so bad.
Yeah,
When
it
there's a
does.
song about young girls.
You already think so
I
highly
mean,
of
like
you.
daughters. I'm
Yeah,
like, I'm definitely like daddy's little princess kind of thing. But like in actuality, it's like daddy's really rough prince.
This
whenever he's like,
really degraded.
yeah,
Hold
whenever
on one
he's
second.
Yeah.
whenever he's like, I have the best daughters in the world, and I'm like, you have more sons. I am your son.
You know what? That's not the first time you've said that on.
No,
the show.
because I say that to him all the time. Like, there's me and my younger sister, and if you guys ever see her, she is the spitting image of me. Like, we literally look identical.
Great. There's two of them.
It's
Great.
yeah, it's really bad. So, but there's me
Satan.
and her, and I'm like, listen, I am more masculine than all three of my brothers.
You're bragging about this.
Jesus Christ.
I am.
Well, listen, you're gonna have to call Stephanie and send our regards. Just a tremendous amount of time because I couldn't imagine having to have been in that situation and then being able to process it, even though it's been 19 years.
Oh
Yeah.
God, so long.
I know you're so old, Billy.
God, so long.
Yeah, old. Yeah.
So this weekend, just a reminder for this weekend, not only do we have the veterans hiring event, but we also have a GoFundMe that is closing out Saturday morning. We are at the 750 plus level, which means I'm getting my eyebrows shaved. But if we hit 1250, Meg is going to do a piss poor job waxing them.
So Meg, are you shaving one and I'm shaving the other?
Oh no, I get both. I have known Hugh for so long, and he has inflicted
that's rude.
so many humiliating things on me, and just been so mean to me throughout the years. I get to do both.
First of all, I'm
I'm
not
gonna shave them the wrong way.
First of all, I'm not denying it, but also you deserve it.
No, I don't. I'm going to shave them
okay.
the wrong way.
Agree to
you get
disagree.
your own hairs, and then you have to pop your eyebrow hairs.
So go check out our GoFundMe. It's on our Facebook. It's also on our Linktree account. Any amount helps. Keep in mind that the money is going towards Leashes of Valor, which pairs service dogs with post 9/11 veterans suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder and traumatic brain injury. They will also be there on Saturday. And MST. I'm very sorry. Excuse me.
What, do you have an STD?
Yeah.
No, MST. I got that.
Trauma. Also, keep a watch on our Facebook page and Instagram this weekend. We'll be doing a couple live interviews with some of the veteran hiring companies that are going to be out there. So if you're looking for a new job or a transfer or ready to get out of the military, or your contract's up and frankly the money's just not worth it anymore, keep an eye out for the videos because I think it'll be.
Because we're going to go live a bunch of different times while we're there, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Throughout
Oh,
the day.
yeah, this is going to be a shit show. Like,
Meg, you just talked about how much effort you put into a very professional event. Please do not say it'll be a shit show.
No. I'm not saying about the event. I'm saying like the three of us videotaping each other.
Oh, that part's going to suck because Meg doesn't know how to use a camera.
My name's Meg.
I bought a professional camera for
Meg
this.
takes like, Instagram photos like everyone else, but if you need her to take a photo of you,
I
she
bought a
can't zoom,
professional
she
camera.
can't tap the focus area. No, it's terrible.
What's the red button mean? Does that mean
I-
I'm going go?
11 out of 10 do not have a good time.
I bought a professional camera for this event, but also because I'm moving to Denver and it's very picturesque there. But I bought a professional camera that is specifically for vlogging.
I hate everything about what you just said. Obviously, we'll be using Billy's.
I don't like that. Well, his is too fancy.
So
He's
please,
got a lot of nice stuff.
please be sure to check us out Saturday. We're looking forward to it. We hope you guys are as well. That all having been said, even though we're doing a lot of stuff Friday and Saturday, we will be back Monday. Correct? Right? Yeah. I am home now, so I will be back on Monday. I forgot if I was leaving town again, but I'm not. I will be back.
If you come, Hugh will buy you a drink.
Oh shit!
You can try.
Yeah.
You can try.
I mean, it wouldn't be that hard to schmooze you over.
It's not. I honestly one beer and I'm like, just put it on my tab. Yeah. No, I am. It is way too easy.
Just tell the bartender to put it on Leslie's bill.
Oh my god!
Yes. Leslie did a lot of the work for this with Meg. Just put it on Leslie's bill. And honestly, if you just shout Leslie and wave, she'll wave back, and the bartender will put it on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Very easy. Yeah.
We are gonna have a good time. Yeah, Leslie said she's got it. Leslie. Hey.
All right, guys.
Oh my
Hey, I can't wait to see you guys tomorrow. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's gonna be great.
Billy, I hope you drive safe. Meg.
I might go live on the car trip up there with whiskey in the car.
It'll be like an old man just driving, like
like my old Scooby-Doo van with whiskey in the back, like
Whiskey the dog, right?
Yeah, that says free candy on the side. I mean,
let's say free guns on the side.
DD214s.
Yeah, free DD214s.
All right, guys.
Gavin, if you're still watching, I'm gonna Superman throat punch you tomorrow. It's gonna be glorious.
Yeah, it's a new veteran high five.
Yeah, it's gonna be great.
Don't look it up.
All right, guys. We'll see you this weekend. Y'all have a good night.
All right, bye, guys.
Bye.